Hello and welcome to this session for Kentucky Go Digital. This is going to be all about Desmos and graphing and even a little bit more. This session, there are two Desmos sessions. This one is more of an intro, you could call it, to Desmos. We're going to be talking about how to use the graphing calculator and why we would want to use the graphing calculator and the different functions that Desmos has to offer, as well as how to make your own card sort, which this is going to be helpful for any subject, but if you're here, you're more than likely a math teacher. So we'll go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me first. I am a 7th year educator. I taught for 6 years high school math, and this year I am a digital learning instructional coach for Johnson Central High School. So this is my first year. And I put on there that I'm a recent Desmos convert. I have used TI-84s in my high school math classes since I was a teacher. I used it when I was in high school. But with recent Desmos rollouts to state testing, as you may know, I have started to implement Desmos in my classroom a little bit more, and I'm actually liking it more than the TI-84, and my students like it more than the TI-84. So we'll talk about why that is, and you may be a Desmos convert as well. So first off, just to kind of introduce Desmos to you, Desmos is relatively new to you, this is going to be helpful information. If you've heard of it, but not really sure like why there even is a Desmos website, then this will be beneficial as well. There are several reasons that I choose to use Desmos, and I encourage my teachers to use Desmos. And the main one is because it's free. TI-84s are expensive, and we know that not all of our students have access to buy one or to download the material from online. So my number one reason, it's free. It's used on state testing, so our students are going to see the Desmos calculator. They need to be exposed to it. They can use it at home on their own devices, so they're not having to lug around the TI-84. You're not having to check one out to students and then maybe not get it back. There are different features than the TI-84 and the Inspire. Some good things, some you may not really like, but there are some differences there. You can share and save graphs and projects, which I think is a neat thing, especially if you're one-to-one in your school. This is my unpopular opinion. I think that Desmos is more user-friendly. I think there are some menus and tools on the TI-84 and even the Inspire that students really have to think about, where do I find this? Where do I go to get this? And I think that Desmos is more intuitive to where to find these things and how to type them in. There are card sorts, which we're going to discuss today. I'm a huge advocate for card sorts in the classroom. It just really can encourage student engagement and student collaboration. And so we have card sorts that we're going to be discussing. There are pre-made activities to extend and engage learning. So if you have never assigned an activity to use on Desmos, they are awesome. I'm not going to get too much into them today. It is kind of part of, card sorts are part of the activities, but there's so much more, and they're already made, or you can make your own. That's my next point. So you do have the ability to make your own activities if you have an idea. So some graphing basics that I want to talk about. This is what the Desmos graphing calculator looks like. So you can see on the left, this is where you type in your function, your expression. If you just want to do a calculation, you can do that as well. And so what happens is, so you can see I've graphed y equals x squared minus 3. And you're going to see that the graph changes in real time. So before I typed that exponent of 2, it showed a linear function, which I think is good for students to see. You know, without an exponent of 2, I have a linear function. When I put that on, how is that going to change the function? And then you have the ability very easily to zoom in and zoom out. The little plus and minus buttons here on the right side. I think zooming in and zooming out on the 84s is kind of cumbersome, but it's very easy here, and you can actually hold down the screen and drag it if you need to look at a different part of the graph as well. And the home button will take you right back to the origin looking like this. And then also, you can very quickly and easily find points of interest. So you can see my two x-intercepts here on this parabola. What I did to get those was I simply clicked where the graph crossed the x-axis, and it's going to pop up without those ordered pairs when I did that. So a very, very easy tool. Another great tool that Desmos uses is function notation. So in an 84, we know that when we're trying to graph something, it will only be in y equals. And that kind of gets students out of seeing function notation. But Desmos loves function notation. So you'll see here, what I've done on the left side of the screen here is type in a function, f of x, and I graphed 1/4 x squared. So it recognizes that function notation, and you could use any letter, obviously. Then once I have already got that function defined, then I typed in f of -2. And so I could, do any function evaluation that I wanted to, and it's going to show up with the value there. And the next thing that I did, and I'll actually go ahead and jump over to Desmos so you can kind of see how this is going to work. So when you go to Desmos website, here's what pops up. If you're going to do any of the activities or the card sorts, you're going to want to be in the for teachers, but we're just using the graphing calculator. So I'm going to click that. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and type in a new function, kind of show you what I was talking about. F of x equals, we'll do 1/3 x squared. So you can see how it's, changing. There's 1/3, just the constant function. And then x makes it linear, squared makes it quadratic. Okay, so let's say here in this next row, I wanted to create a table of values with my function. So I'm going to click the plus sign, and then I'm going to click table. 1, 2, 3, it's automatically calling those up. Here we go. Okay, so f of x1. So I'm going to use those x1 values, but plug in those x1 values into my function. So you can see it evaluating there, and you can actually even see over on the graph those points that are plotted. Let's say that I was teaching transformations of functions, and I wanted students to see, okay, what happens if I were to add 3 to each one of those? I'm going to add a new column, and now I'm going to say, okay, take those x1 values and add 3. So now you can see these new points plotted, and it's literally shifting that graph up 3 units. So the table is an awesome tool because it recognizes function notation. So regressions, this is an awesome tool. I think they're all awesome, but regressions is something that I use in class quite often. Okay, so what's cool about regressions is if you have a set of data that you want to import into your calculator, you can copy and paste, and it's super simple. So I have a sample data set that I'm going to click here. Let it load. Okay, this is X position and height off of ground. So I'm just going to copy this. Well, if it will let me. There we go. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go over to my calculator. I'm going to X out of what I've done previously. And I'm not even going to push plus. I'm just going to paste. And it's going to recognize those as X1, Y1 values. And it says we zoomed to fit your data. So that is awesome. So you can see that graph there. So now what you see on this screen are several things. You see where I have graphed the first, I've plotted the residuals once I typed in my regression equation. And you can see where you can change the type of equation. So I used a quadratic to represent the regression here. So I'm going to go over and type this in. So it's going to be y sub 1 because I'm using my y sub 1 values. You're going to use a little tilde kind of like as an estimate. That's how it recognizes the regression. A x minus h squared plus b. Oh, I forgot my subscript. There we go. So I can use my x1 values. My students do this often, so I think that's good to point out. Okay, so you can see several things here. You've got your r squared value, so it's very close to a quadratic regression. You've got your a, b, and h, so it's recognizing what I would put in for those values in the quadratic equation. So if students need to write the regression equation, it's very easy to see those there. I don't have to go to another menu to find them. And then I can just quickly plot my residuals if I want to. So it's going to add that to my table. You can see them plotted there. It looks like a great quadratic regression. And like I said, you can easily change that. If you wanted to change it to, let it fit a linear regression, you totally can do that as well. You're just going to want to use those x1 and y1 values in your equation because you called them that in your table. All right, this way. All right, so this is probably my favorite tool in Desmos, and that is sliders. So this is something that is not in a TI-84, and to my knowledge, not in an Inspire. I could be wrong. I'm more of an 84 user, but sliders are an awesome teaching tool. I think that's why Desmos uses them. It's a teaching tool. So what are Desmos? So it's an awesome exploration tool. I use sliders every time I teach transformations of functions or review transformations of functions. So you're going to see that here in a second. Okay, so what I have typed in here is the linear function, so with just variables. And then I'm having Desmos recognize that these variables that I've typed in instead of values. So I'll go ahead and just type that in so you can see how this happens in real time. So y equals mx plus b. So maybe I started with linear functions, something that students are more familiar with. I'll click home and go back. So it's recognizing that m and b are variables. So I'm going to add all. You can see how these pop up. So what happens is I am creating literally a sliding tool that goes between -10 and 10, which you can change. I'll show you in a second. And I'm having the graph, as you can see how in real time it's changing on the right side. So I'm seeing as a student, okay, when the values are negative, my line is falling from left to right. When the values are positive, my line is increasing. You could ask, what changes is the b values changing? Well, the graph's moving up and down. Let me see my y-intercept. So you can see these actually play out. I can push play and let it change itself. If for some reason you wanted students to look at different values, you can just click on where it says -10 to +10, and you could change that. Let's say we did -20 to +20, and I can even change the step, change it by 2 or something. So you can see how it's just hitting those values, multiples of 2. So you can see how this would play out in a quadratic function. Minus h squared plus k. And I'm going to have it add all 3 sliders now because I have 3 variables. So then I could ask students, what changes as a changes? How does it change? What changes as h changes? How does it change? I think that using this is very powerful for students to see because they're actually seeing, it helps them remember, they're actually seeing, oh, when a is less than 1 or less than 0, I guess I should say, then my graph is upside down. So I'm seeing that change and I'm making that connection myself. And I think I have an activity here for you that you can make a copy of that I use in my classes. So like I said, all you do is you type a variable in place for what you would typically type in a value for. You're going to click add slider. It's going to recognize it and explore. We saw before with the ordered pairs how you could use, I think they used A1 and B1. There we go. So add all, and you can, for an ordered pair even, you can use sliders. So anything that Desmos is recognizing as a variable can be added in as a slider. So ways that I think are practical to use sliders. First off, like I said, is for discovery. When we have students discover transformations and features of functions, it's going to help them retain the information more rather than just presenting it as notes and saying, here's how you move a function up and down. Here's how you move a function right and left. So they're getting to discover these themselves. We can also use sliders to write equations. So you can have students use sliders to match 2 functions so they determine what the values should be in the equation. So there are several activities that are already made like this in Desmos, but let's say that I wanted the student to write, I've got a graph, I want the student to write the equation of that graph. Well, it's kind of intimidating to come up with those values yourself, especially if students are just beginning discussing transformations of functions. So you could have them adjust the slider so that your new graph matches up with the one that's already there. Like I said, there are activities that have those. Restrictions. So we can show domain restrictions with sliders. You know how you can change your min and your max. So you can change those so you can see that the slider only goes between 2 values. And then lastly, like you saw in the video, you can use animations. So you can have students create the animations, and that can get more complex. I know there's activities there that kind of walk your students through those animations, and then some that even already use the animations as part of the activity. So they're already made in there. So if you want an example activity for transformations of quadratic functions, I have that for you. This is activity that I use in class. You can click, if you're on the presentation, just click that link. It'll force you to make a copy. That way you can use this, or you can change it however you want to, but I'll open it up and show you kind of what I have students do. So I have them actually turn this in on Google Classroom. You wouldn't have to do that. I've used it in the handout format as well, just depending on kind of where you're at with your classes. So it's going to walk them through, to go to Desmos, click Start Graphing, tells them what to type in, and then kind of walks them through that. So you start with up and down movement. So it says this transformations adds or subtracts on the outside. So it's going to have them actually type in a function. Well, you're going to type in the K, and then you're only adding one slider at a time. So that way it's not, information overload. So they're only looking at K moving. So it tells them to adjust the slider to 3, take a screenshot, and tell me how it changed from the parent function. I think I even have them graph the parent function, so they have that there. They can see it going through the origin. And then when they see that +3, they're going to be able to clearly see the change from the parent function. But that's using sliders. So you could have them use, look at all 3 transform A, H, and K, look at all 3 transformations at once, or you could have them divided up, just kind of depending on where you're at with your class. So you can use that. You don't have to use that, but I thought I would throw that out there. All right, so now we are going to discuss card sorts. So we can use card sorts across subjects and not just math. So let's say that you are a math teacher, you learn about card sorts and you want to take it to another subject at your school. I think that would be awesome. And there are all kinds of card sorts already on there for other subjects, and it's very simple to make your own, and that's what I'm going to discuss with you today. So if you have never used any activities in Desmos, I kind of need to introduce this first before explaining what a card sort is, because card sorts are part of activities. They are completely free for students or for teachers to use, and of course for students to use. You can search pre-made activities, or you can create your own. The other Desmos presentation in Kentucky Go Digital is going to dive more into activities on how to create your own and how to search for other activities and assign them. I'll kind of do a basic overview, but if you're really interested in creating your own activities, I would highly advise you to go to that session as well. You can assign to your students. I think this is the coolest part. It will sync with Google Classroom, so you can assign it to students so that they see, hey, Ms. Garner wants me to do this Desmos activity. It can be student-paced or teacher-paced, so that when there were days last year when we were in person, I wanted it to be teacher-paced so that students were on the same screen that I was on and we could have lots of discussion. But on days that we were virtual, I would make it student-paced. That way students could work through it at their own pace. You set that. You can see students' answers in real time. So if you are on the teacher-paced, you can you can see exactly what students are answering and when they're answering it. So that's neat. It's a great way to facilitate discussion. I love to use these in class, in person, so that we can have those discussions and students are able to work individually, but also collaboratively. Like I said, students can work individually or in groups. If you want to know more, like I said, check out the other Desmos presentation in Kentucky Go Digital. I'm going to go ahead, and I may be jumping ahead of myself, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here just to kind of get you started. If you want to explore the activities, you can just go to desmos.com. That's where I always start. If you don't have an account, I would go ahead and create an account, because you're going to be able to save the activities that you create. You're going to be able to favorite ones that you see. And then, of course, that's how you would assign it to students as well. So you could log in, I think is what it would say there, if you don't have an account. So you could click that. You can go to the activities from here using Desmos in the classroom. So students could type in a code there. If you didn't assign it to them, you just kind of brought it up in class one day, they could type in the code there, or you could browse activities. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right. So you can search if you just say, I want to talk about quadratic it's got a whole collection of quadratic functions, but let's say I want to get more specific, quadratic transformations. So this is one that I had edited before, but these are ones that was, you can see if it's created by Desmos or created by someone else. But you can search anything there. Well, so let's say that I wanted to use this marble slides parabolas. It's going to show me that students can't see it on mobile, but we could see it on tablet or laptops. They can use it on their phone. And so you're going to see the screens. So you can student preview, you'd want to take a look at that, make sure it's something that your students could do. You could walk through it that way yourself. And then if you wanted to assign, you could assign to your classes or just create a single session code. So if you don't really want to fool with letting it sync to Google Classroom or you don't use Google Classroom, you can just do a single session code. You can say how long do you want it to be active for, create invitation code, and then students would just type in that code on that very first home screen that we saw. Or you could assign it to your classes. So my posting preferences, I don't like it to post to Google Classroom. I want to go post it myself in case I'm not ready to assign it yet. So you can see how it will sync to your Google Classrooms. Okay, so we're going to try it out. So let's have you do what students would do. So this says, hey students, I just got this when I created my activity and I wanted to, assign a single session code. This is what I got. So, hey students, go to student.desmos.com and type in that code. So I'm going to do that with you here. And student.desmos.com, super simple. If your students have an account, it will very quickly sync to Google. That way you know who's completed it because their name is in it. So enter your code. So my code was WHS H4P. WHS-H4P. So if you would do this as well, that would be awesome. That way you can kind of see what we're doing. So it's called the card sort intro. So I created a card sort about card sorts. And you can enter your name in. If you're already logged in, it's going to recognize your name. And then, so this is what students would see. And I kind of created this, borrowed a little bit, created a little bit. So why create and use a Desmos card sort? So I think it's great because you've got built-in feedback. Students see, yes, this works, no, this doesn't. They can work individually or collaboratively. We can use it for more than math. We don't have to use Ziploc baggies and cut little pieces out if you were a proponent of card sorts before. And probably my biggest hang up with card sorts, it seems like I would have like 2 or 3 groups finish at the same time. And I would need to run around and check to see if students got it correct. And I don't have to do that with Desmos card sorts. But I'm still able to see firsthand, and I'll show you the teacher view later, but I'm still able to see exactly what students are matching up. It's real time. So if I see that a lot of students are matching 2 cards incorrectly, I can pause the class. We can have a discussion about it. All right, so this is just something, to kind of show you how you can move these around. So you can see that it wants me to, I put these directions, group states with their correct time zone by dragging cards on top of each other. So what Desmos is going to do, it's going to recognize when you drag these together, it's not going to tell you on here if it's correct or not. I didn't set it to that, but it's just having you group them together. Because sometimes you don't, there's not a right or wrong answer. You're having students group things for how they think about things. So, you don't have to set a key, but I will show you how you can. So you can see how it's recognizing when 2 cards go together. So like I said, this one doesn't have a key. So that's why, it's not telling me that that's wrong. But on the teacher side, I can see exactly how students are matching these things up. So I'm not going to get into a geography lesson. But all right, so then you can ask a question. So you could have the students reflect on the last screen, and they could even go back if they needed to if you don't have it on teacher pace. So you could ask a question. What did you notice? What did you wonder? So when you type in an answer to this and then you click share with class, if the teacher has pulled, actually it's going to show up everybody's. So I'm going to see other students' answers, and then the teacher can see them all together. So that's how you can really engage discussion there. Things I wish I was doing right now. Again, not right or wrong answers, but if you want to take a second and group those together, things I love to do, meh, not for me. This is a good slide for to do things like this for the beginning of the year. So students are already getting exposed to Desmos, but you're kind of getting to know them a little bit, and then they can have discussions with other students who have similar likes. So I'm not much of a reader, but I love to sit on the beach. So you could put those in. You can see how they kind of wait to attach there. Definitely not for me. Yeah, I'll ski, I'll boat, I'll hike. Oops, I have those grouped. I need to group them there, so you can see how you can move those. I'll sleep, and I'll for sure eat a taco. So you could have students do something like that in your first few days of school. And then, if you needed to have students discuss that as well, you could have that slide on there. So here's some examples of other subjects. So there are links here that will take you to these if you want to check those out. So there's some other math ones, especially if you're math, you might want to take a look at those. Number properties, always, sometimes never, simple compound interest. But lots of different things there. So if you wanted to show, your English department at school, hey, this is how we could use, or how you guys could use Desmos in the English class, you could show them an activity of that. So if you like it, you can bookmark it. So you can see the little plus sign in the upper right-hand corner. And so it's going to allow you to come back and see that later, so you don't have to search for it or anything. And then you could student preview, and then you could launch it by creating a class code or assigning it to your Google Classroom. All right, so you can see here on the left side that this is like the teacher view. So if I set a key for what's right and what's wrong, if you have that kind of card sort, I can see exactly what students are matching together. So I see that Richard is doing a great job, but Grace might need some help. So I'm seeing that in real time. That's something that only I can see, unless I was just for some reason sharing my screen to the class. But I'm seeing, in real time what students' responses are. So here's a good time to reflect. So you can type this in. When during a lesson might you launch a card sort? Beginning, middle, end, why? How might you use the information gained from your students' card sort? This would be a great time to really reflect and say, okay, I need to spend more time on this subject. We can go on, whatever. Why might a card sort be beneficial to students and teachers? So you can go ahead and type in your answers there and share with the class. I'll give you a second to do that. All right, so you can come back if you need to. If you want just a step-by-step guide, I found this online to create your very own card sort. You can copy and paste this link here, and it will pull up a Google Doc for you that has a step-by-step. All right, what's next? So creating your own card sort, very simple. So I'm going to go out of here, and I'm going to go back to Desmos, and I'm going to, there's lots of ways around doing this. I'm going to go for teachers. It's going to bring up my activities. So custom activities, and I'm going to go to new. So you can click on the left side there, custom activities, and I'm going to click new activity. So I'm just going to do card sort Kentucky Go digital example. So you can make it private. You can make it so that anyone with a link, if you wanted to share it across your department. Create a new activity. So this is how you would create any kind of activity. Right now, I'm only discussing card sorts. So over here on the left side, I want you to click card sort, the bottom of that screen. That's the bottom option there. So this is going to change the kind of activity. So you could add a title, match the graph with the equation. Okay, so just something kind of simple like that. All right, so I'm just going to create my cards. I don't have to create them in any specific order, but I'm going to create my cards. So I'm going to click math or text. Okay, so this is going to allow me to type in any kind of math type by just clicking this little icon here for type math, or just text. Okay, so I'm going to do math type because I'm going to type in an equation. I'm going to type in y equals x squared plus 3. All right, so that's one of the cards. The cards will just have that equation. I'm wanting students to match card with graph. So my next card I create, I want it to be a graph. So I'm going to click graph. It's going to pull up the graphing calculator. Okay, so I'm going to type in what I want it to graph now, which was the x squared plus 3. So this card is only going to include the graph. I'm going to click done, and you can see it there. It's not going to show the equation. It's only going to show the card. I'll do a couple other ones. Let's go back to math type. Y equals, we'll do x. I want them to know the difference here. X plus 3 squared. Let's click enter. And I'm going to do, I can actually probably copy this, click graph, paste it. There we go. It's got a little extra something there, but we can delete those off. There we go. Done. Okay, so now I've got it set, and if I were to just publish at this point, we wouldn't have an answer key. But if I click answer key down here at the bottom, because there are right and wrong answers, it says group cards to create an answer key. We'll use this to check student work in the dashboard. So I'm going to match those two together. I'm going to match those two together. Make sure they actually group together and click done. Okay, so the answer key is made. I can click publish. And now I could assign it to my students once it pops up here. Yeah, there we go. So there are other ways that you can create, questions on there as well. And you can play around with adding other slides. So I've got actually some tips here, I think. Yeah, so this was how to create the card sort or how to make your answer key. And the reason why I put this on here is, okay, so 20 cards is about all you want to do on a slide. After that, it gets kind of overwhelming. So if you have more than 20 cards that you want them to sort, I would just create another slide here. I think there's a plus sign on there somewhere, or that would just be another slide, and then you can create more cards there. So really no more than 20 cards is what you need. Okay, so when you're on the teacher view of things, here's what you're going to see. So like I showed you that picture before, so you can use the results view to track student progress, so you can see if it's green, it's good, red, they need to go back, and then you can also see incomplete, where they've got these other cards that haven't been matched anywhere. You can click on an individual student. So let's say I wanted to take a look at what Ada was matching exactly. So I could click on that, and then I could see exactly the cards that she's matching together and what's right and what's wrong. And then in summary view, I can see the most common incorrect group. So this is an awesome tool because you could be able to facilitate class discussion on, okay, why are we getting this wrong? And it's going to show me exactly the students who got it wrong. So that's awesome. I would love to get any feedback from you. You could send me an email. You could type in the chat any questions, anything that you would like to add. If there's something that I left off, I would love to know those things, and I'll give you my contact information here. So there's my email, and I appreciate you all hanging out with me today and learning about Desmos. Like I said, send me any feedback, any things that you have found. If you would like to share your card sort or whatever, if you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. So thank you all.